The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
This is one of our absolute favorite guests over time. Extremely outspoken, very, very bright, knowledgeable, and I'm a big fan. Ben Barrack rejoins us. Hey, Ben, good morning. Welcome back to Denver on Thursday morning, and thanks for doing it one more time.
No problem. Good to be with you again, Peter, and back at you on the fandom.
If you would just briefly do a bio so we get a sense of, the people who've never heard you before get a sense of you, and then let's just get to the root of this morning.
Yeah, right. I've been in talk radio now for about 10 years. Work with a syndicated program out here in Texas, and I also contribute to Shoebot.com, Wally Shoebot's page, and just do quite a bit of writing for them, and then also in the talk radio biz, and authored a couple of books.
Yesterday you were with us when this story was first coming apart, the massacre in Paris, and since then we have learned more, certainly, about these killers. But I don't think, and again, I want to start on the macro level. The mainstream media. I spent a lot of time yesterday watching the networks. I have my morning paper in front of me. No one, I think, at this point should be shocked that their total lack of speaking to Islam or to the Muslim faith or the acts of jihad. It is amazing how this is being covered. Speak to that if you would.
Yeah, it is really a disturbing dynamic that is becoming more and more obvious. I mean, I think even to folks that aren't in the news, and that's I guess the positive to take away from this. But the media is once again going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming. And frankly, I mean, if you look, we hear about politicians that need to speak over the media. Well, I think what's happening as these terror attacks unfold. I was looking at a contrast this morning. If you remember, in the 2004 Madrid train bombings, it was those occurred about 3 days before an election. And if you remember, it was the bombings typically, historically, have aided right-wing candidates. In that particular case, it was the socialist candidate that actually won in the wake of those bombings, and it didn't make sense. But I went back and was reading some news articles from that period, and the right-wing politician, Aznar, was not leveling with the American people, or with the people. He wasn't leveling with his people. And his opponent was running on a platform of removal of troops from Iraq. Now, in hindsight, we know pretty much that the Iraq strategy was flawed, and you had people that figured it out, and I think that's what happened in Spain. But now you look at the people are going above the media in France. They are seeing what candidate like Marine Le Pen is saying. She's identified the problem, and I think that the media in here, in the U.S. and in Europe, is trying to hold the line, and I think it's failing miserably. Not as quickly as you or I would like, but I think it's failing because the people are seeing the truth, and now you have a handful of politicians who are really speaking to that truth, and they're nailing the real issue and identifying it, and that's the kind of thing that the people will respect.
The theme is going to be, and I was up late watching last night, and I was online last night, but and again, I'm sure you're ahead of me on this, but mark my words, this is going to be the mainstream media's theme. These are just two loser thugs who have been radicalized, but it has nothing to do with mainstream Islam. And I mean, mark my words, I've seen that said now about 15 different ways since last night at 9 o'clock. They will be by the way, they're being called two French brothers, the two guys that are still on the run, and then if you dig in deeper and you find these no-go areas in France today where non-Muslim people simply don't go. And again, I think in some ways, and this is one of the things I like to push, the French and the British took in, and they're the equivalent of illegal immigration. The French wanted cheap labor. The British wanted cheap labor. The same thing Republicans and Democrats wanted, particularly Republicans wanted in illegal immigration, was cheap labor. And then now there's a cancer. Now there's this internal cancer. And there is no allegiance, there's no allegiance from the illegals in this country to this country. There is no, and we have seen, although, they were simply just ahead of us. They're about 8 to 12 years ahead of the United States of America in illegal immigration. And why I always get into these arguments has nothing to do with racism, although that's, of course, the attack the politically correct make. I have no idea what skin color or ethnicity is illegal. But in France, they opened up their arms because they wanted cheap labor. They had a very socialist form of government and remained one. And they took in all of these people. And look what they got for it.
Yeah.
And I think this is an enormous lesson I think that lesson, if it hasn't, let me say that again. Those of us who know the lesson have learned it. Those who have not learned the lesson, I think, have no intent of learning it.
Yeah. As far as the immigration issue, I think cheap labor, I don't think is exclusive. I think it is definitely a primary reason. But you look at one of the consequences of cheap labor, and we talk about this too in the U.S., that has to do with getting Democrat votes and basically a lot of people that are completely uneducated. It dilutes the informed vote. I mean, it one of the consequences of all this, and I would say that over the past, with the dawn of the internet, I would say over the past 15 years or so, the informed voter has become exponentially more informed. If you want to find out what's going on, you can. And I think that one of the consequences of this is it has struck fear into the hearts of leaders. And one of the ways that they can dilute that voting block, that informed voting block, is to bring in more individuals. And the other thing is that it's an aspect of human nature. It's the path of least resistance, and it goes to the macro thing you're talking about with intimidation.
Oh man,
people that don't, the countries that don't bring in these immigrants, like you say, are accused of being xenophobic or against multiculturalism, which is a word I've come to loathe. But there's a whole host of reasons. But you talk about the media and why they want to do this. It is completely the way they misidentify all of this.
No, it's amazing.
It's as if they are cutting their own throats, ending their own careers. It's almost as if it's not the media anymore.
We have seen
the media was established as a check, and it was established for people who wanted to speak out, who wanted to exercise freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And what we've got are people who are running these organizations who seem to be working towards the exact opposite. I think that is a red flag all by itself.
If you just joined us, this is one of my true favorites, radio talk show host, writer, and again, I think very critical thinker, Ben Barrack, is our guest. It's going to be 50 for a high today, 30 on Friday. Let me give you an example. This is how the lead wire service this morning. The two French brothers on the run from police after massacring 12 people in Paris were drug-taking petty criminals before being radicalized and sent to Yemen to train as killers. Second paragraph, Saeed Karachi and sibling Sharif, orphans who were brought up in a care home in Brittany, northern France, before returning to a life of crime and ultimately to mass murder. Third paragraph, Sharif's own lawyer once described him as an apprentice loser, a hashish-smoking pizza delivery driver who didn't know what to do. A video has surfaced of him rapping in 2005. Those are the first 3 paragraphs, Ben.
Wow. You know, the real issue is, Peter, here is there has been an agenda that has been going on for, years now. And if you've heard of, I'm sure you've heard of it, the Istanbul Process. The Istanbul Process was kicked off in response to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the 57 Islamic State bloc that has been working for years. I mean, literally years. It is the sole agenda of this group to get non-Muslim countries to criminalize any criticism against Islam. And they have really had difficulty with that until about 2011, when there was a United Nations Human Rights Resolution 1618 that kind of made it a little bit easier to push this through. And Hillary Clinton was in Istanbul in 2011, and she kicked off this process with the foreign minister of Turkey at the time, Davutoglu, who's now, I believe, prime minister, and the leader of the OIC. And one of the things that they attempted to do at that meeting was to figure out a way around the problems of criminalizing, because free speech is almost sacrosanct in Western civilization. So what Hillary Clinton said in her speech is that we need to use things like, and these are quotes, shaming and peer pressure to get people not to do what we abhor. And so it kind of revealed the agenda of this. It's kind of like changing tactics. When you talk about innocence of Muslims, the video they blamed for the Benghazi attacks, the same thing was at work. They were trying to get countries to crack down on criticism of Islam. And in this particular case, what Hillary was doing was she was issuing essentially the political marching orders to get people to use political correctness, something we all claim we despise. She was advocating for that. And now what we see in media is we see media doing the job that many of these governments can't do overtly. The media is pushing this Istanbul process. And it's really, when you boil it all down, it's the agenda of the OIC. These are the kinds of things. So that makes you wonder, well, how we know of Muslim Brotherhood infiltration in our government. Well, how much has it infiltrated or affected the media, which seems to be doing the exact opposite of what it is out there supposed to be doing?
It is amazing to watch this. Again, it's another one of my broken records, but multiculturalism, political correctness, these are suicide pacts.
Yes.
This is the suicide pact that Western civilization has made with big media, politicians, big corporations, multinational corporations, and it will be one of the death knells for this nation and for the West. One of the things, again, that I watched a theme yesterday, and locally, Channel 9, one of my true favorite outlets, they went out to the University of Denver in their 4 o'clock newscast. I had to turn it off, and they did an interview with a professor, and they cautioned everyone, for heaven's sakes, don't think this is all Muslims. And that was really the theme. I mean, they really, their principal theme right now is getting Denver Bronco yard signs handed out to people in Safeway stores. But they, honest to God, no, I'm serious as a heart attack. But what was interesting was they went out there and they found a professor who said it's important not to think this is all Muslims. And I'm thinking to myself, well, let's not talk about Sharia. Let's not talk about condemnation of free speech. Let's not talk about putting fear into people. I love these French signs, we are not afraid. My die and rear end, of course you're afraid. Anyone, I think, with room temperature IQ should be afraid. Once this stuff, we're not afraid. Well, then why didn't you do something before? The answer is, of course, they're afraid. And you should be afraid. These people are teaching you something you should learn from. Do you? I mean, Ben, your thoughts? Yeah,
it is. If I don't need to watch sitcoms anymore, Peter, to get a few laughs. All I need to do is turn on my local news. It is literally so absurd. It's like it's like those commercials you see that are so dumb they're funny. I mean, that's what I feel like when I watch my local news.
Yeah, me too.
Up and down the dial. It's like, do you people realize how foolish you look? But when they surrender their charter, essentially what they're in business to do, when they fail to continue to hold that sacrosanct, when they fail to really hold up as their purpose, their reason for being, when they fail to hold up that freedom of press and that the fourth estate as an ideal, that's when they're going to surrender it, and that's what we're seeing. They're surrendering I mean, if they really cared about their profession and journalism, they'd be fighting for this a whole lot more, and they've surrendered it.
Well, but again, I do believe that most people, and I don't know how you judge most people, but most people receive their daily information from the big letter networks, from newspapers, although it is changing. The variables are changing to outlets like yourself and to things on the internet, or Limbaugh still has a lot of sway. But by and large, I look at, I particularly watch Brian Williams, who has slipped drastically in the Nielsen's, and I locally Channel 9, the news leader. I'm telling you, it was horrible. I mean, I'm waiting for someone to say the dictums of the faith. I mean, we went through, you and I were speaking yesterday, we have been through this interesting dust up here of this Douglas County Public Middle School hauling seventh graders off to a mosque and making requirements on little girls. And we had the principal on yesterday. He gets pushed in a corner. I have this, I threw down the gauntlet and said, I want you to take, and I want you to know that I am an advocate of gay marriage. But having said that, I said, here's what I'd like you to do. Take those little seventh grade kids, school bus them to a full Bible-believing, you fill in the blank, evangelical Protestant church that doesn't believe in gay marriage and openly espouses it, and give those kids a tour. And I said, I would bet my right arm, my left arm, my right leg, my left leg, and my wallet that school system would never take those kids to that church. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's right, and maybe you could follow up with him and see if he does.
Oh, he won't. They won't.
Yeah, that's true, and it's it is maddening, and but like you say, I think there are some folks that are beginning to get it. I have kind of a gauge, a barometer for myself as far as how things are playing in the media. And, I like you, I go to Yahoo and I see what's trending on Twitter, and it's Kardashian and Lohan, and I just, roll my eyes and say, I can't believe what I'm seeing based on what I know. And, I will occasionally, there will be a news story that someone whom I know, whether it's family or friend, that isn't really politically attuned, will call me and start asking about a particular story. And that's how I kind of figure out that, okay, this one is catching people's attention. And I keep waiting for that to, become a dominant, these issues to become dominant among the population. But you just never know what it's going to be, what's going to catch fire, set the fire alight, and you just hope that something does sooner rather than later.
But do you expect? You saw Barack Obama's statements yesterday. No mention of Islam, no mention of jihad, and they use that catch-all phrase, terror. And as you and I have talked about, George Bush declares war on a noun. It's ridiculous. But do you think that you're going to hear John Kerry confront the beliefs of those murderers?
No.
I don't either.
No.
Do you think you're going to see Brian Williams on the evening news confront the beliefs of those murderers?
No.
No.
No. The only thing we can hope for, really what we're reduced to at this point is reality slapping them in the face. And that's, you have a series of you have different leaders. You have, I think we talked about this briefly. We have the David Cameron wing and the Tony Abbott wing versus the Marine Le Pen and the Geert Wilders wing. people that are willing to admit the truth and those who are continuing to live in denial and govern that way. But I think with Barack Obama, what we've got is somebody who embraces this stuff.
Sure.
He's not somebody that's in denial, and he's not somebody who's confronting it. I believe he's someone who's embracing it.
See, I am and proudly say this, and have said it now for 7 years, I'm a birther. I don't know who this guy is. I have no clue. I have no idea who he is. I have no idea what he believes. Everything about his life has been suppressed. You and I have spoken about this before. So, he is, he's a Rorschach test. You will see in him what you may. You will see in what you might. But certainly, as a little boy, as a young man, he has danced with the faith. In fact, there's been numbers of occasions. Remember, Stephanopoulos covers down for him. Reverend Wright makes that statement, how he found a way to blend Barack Obama's Islamic beliefs into Christianity. I mean, this guy is clearly, he did not attend a madras, but he attended religious school, and we know that part of it. But the rest of it is simply coin toss belief. You're right. If you go back and you look at his voting records, foreign policy decisions, even after the Brotherhood seizes power in Cairo, he is still sending battle tanks and fighter jets. To the life of me, and like I said, I may go to my grave never knowing who this man really is, or we may someday learn who he is. But right now, Ben, you and I both know, and anybody with room temperature IQ knows, you have no idea who this guy is.
Right. Well, he's the quintessential example of why you need to profile. Because if we did have, and I'm speaking hypothetically here, but if we did have a Muslim Brotherhood agent somehow masterfully and become president of this United States, what would the profile of that individual look like? Sure. And how closely does this president match that profile?
But again, I mean, I have spent a long time and listened to a lot of smart people, and there are no answers. I mean, as I've been using my grandmother's term lately a lot, as God is my witness, but you don't know who this guy is. And we're going to do a piece next week. The evidence is overwhelming. The so-called birth certificate has been manufactured. His what historians call, and they use different terms, but credentials sometimes are used. Bona fides is the word that's most often used. All of them are suppressed. You don't know who this guy is. I swear you have no idea who he is. I don't even know who his biological father is. And having said those things, and I think I could the people who would call me racist for so many years, they've ceased doing it, and they just lay off their attacks now. We've invited all of them on the show. They will not appear to even have a conversation about it. So having said that, I figure we've won at least that part of the battle. They've at least skunked off. But having said that, I swear, Ben, you have no idea who this man is. I certainly don't. But again, yesterday, the total lack, and the same thing was with John Kerry, but Kerry, as well as Hillary during Benghazi, I mean, they simply are butt boys. I mean, they're stooges, and they will do what they're told to do. Kerry has become a caricature of himself, but they can't say Islam, they can't say jihad, they can't say those words. And like I said, until that moment comes, until some one of these people will be able to confront the beliefs, pal, we got no dog in the fight. Yeah,
well, it's amazing how history does repeat itself. I saw a very short clip of Neville Chamberlain this morning announcing that he was resigning, that he had sought an audience with the king and announced his resignation, and announced that Winston Churchill would be taking over. That's because he had failed so miserably with the fight against the Nazis.
He believed them.
Yeah, he believed them. And I don't know what the media was like at that time. I don't know if they supported him or not, but you really get a palpable sense that kind of a dynamic is taking place right now. You just don't know what event or events is going to shift the collective paradigm. You just don't know what it is. It's coming. There's no doubt it's coming. You just don't know when or how it's going to manifest itself.
History has that great line where the tiger will eat you, but he will just eat you last. And and Neville Chamberlain truly believed the world was weary of the First World War. The world was in depression, and he more wanted it to be true And the people, the people like Winston Churchill, and there were others as well who said, "Do not believe this man." And
Right.
and of course, Churchill, of course, had been sent out to pasture. No
Yep.
one
Sure.
he
Yeah,
had
that's right.
he'd been relegated to nothingness, and
And the irony of it is, the repetition of history is actually more closely aligned with what happened than we realize. How many people know that Hitler aligned with the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood
we've
in
talked
World
about it
War II?
many times
Yeah,
about the Mufti and the Grand
yeah,
Mufti, and there's books on it, we've done shows on it, and the role the Mufti played, and how the Mufti skated away. By the way, when it was over, the Mufti
yeah,
there was an SS unit of recruited in Croatia. They were some of the most brutal when it came to the so-called final solution, and a lot of that stuff it doesn't even appear. And again, then I give you the last comment. I know you got to get to work as well, but when we talk about this whole Douglas County public school trip, and you wonder, I got a text last night from someone I know that you like a lot, former Congressman Tancredo, and
yes.
Tancredo was listening in when the principal was on the show. Let me read you Tommy's text that he came, and no one does it better. Let me jump to my text messages. Tancredo, this came in last night at I go to bed, so this was at 8:57 last night.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, no, it said, Pete, this is from former Congressman Tancredo. Pete, you should ask the principal to let you or me to observe the class discussion on Islam before and after they go to the mosque. That's where we'll find out how Islam is being described to heads full of mush. Signed, Tom
Yeah,
Tancredo.
excellent idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, excellent idea.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever I could ever do for you, but you have done so much for me. Take care of yourself, Ben. Thanks for doing the radio show.
All right, you too, Peter.
All
Have a
right,
good
God
day.
bless, man. You too. Ben Barrack.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.